This is Charles Kao with TravelMole TV in Hainan, China, at the World Travel and Tourism Council Summit with the Honorable Raymond Bickson, who's the Managing Director and CEO of the TAJ Hotel Resorts and Palaces, which is part of the Indian Hotels Company. So interesting to learn from you just now that India had 62,000 hotel rooms in 2003 when you first went to I guess, look at the hotel situation, and today has about 250,000, 11 years later. And China has 3 million rooms. U.S. has 5 million rooms. So your point to me was the opportunity. It's written on the wall. It's going to grow tremendously. How have the TAJ Group, the Indian Hotels Group, taken advantage? Well, wrong word. How has it been involved in progressing this?
Well, I think, one has to look at it. It was a closed market for 30, 40, 50 years. So essentially, the domestic brands were the dominant brands, was the only brands. So the international hotel companies, really, you couldn't repatriate your management fees. It was very complicated. So when the country opened up in the 90s, and when one has seen the growth in Asia, and one looks at, say, China versus India today, and vice versa, and you look at the growth, the exponential growth of the rising middle class, the availability of disposable income allows you then to travel more, etc. That when you look at a market like India and say, 60,000 rooms compared to 3 million rooms, for those today 47 international brands, which are all now in India, you have the big boys here: Marriott, Starwood, Hyatt, Hilton, Intercontinental, Accor, all looking at that market saying, my God, it's less than 300,000 rooms in a market, say in Asia, like in China with 3 million rooms. It's a no-brainer that that's going to be a market that one has to reckon with eventually. So it's just a question of time, going through the system. There's a lot of work done by organizations like the WTTC to make the government understand that travel and tourism is the largest employer in the world. We produce 8 to 10% of global GDP. We're the largest employer in the world. And one looks at an economy with, say, 1.1, 1.2 billion people, of which over 60% of that are people under 30 years old. That's a significant amount of youth. And so I guess, there has to be opportunity. And in the next 20 years, as 70% of the global population migrate to the larger cities, there's going to be a tremendous flux of young people looking for employment. So what better way is there to do sustainable livelihoods than through travel and tourism, whether it's airlines, car rental companies, hotels, whether it's restaurants, whether it's travel agencies, and today that market for the young people, that scarcity or paucity of talent makes it sort of, the challenge being finding qualified staff, trained staff. So the hospitality side of it, hotels in particular, are the easy picking ground for consumer, retail, BPOs, etc., airlines. So hotels, the hotel trained young students coming out of the schools, you just can't produce enough of them to meet the demand that's out there. So it's a interesting challenge to look at, and an interesting way that I think the market is going to grow.
Back in 2003, there were 62,000 rooms in India. How many of those were part of the TAJ group back then?
Yeah, well, it's very easy. The three main domestic players, the domestic brands, meaning TAJ, Oberoi, ITC, between the three of us, we had about 65% of the market. And Taj had the largest share. We were almost 28 to 30% of that market. Today, our market share, real value, is about 11 to 12%. But as the market grows, we also have to grow. So we have been, in the last 10 years, we have grown from little under 7,000 rooms today to about 16,000 rooms, and the portfolio has gone from 61 hotels to 126 hotels, and as well as the fact that we're in more countries than we were in the past. So because of the extremely powerful loyalty programs that the large brands bring to the table, that in order to protect our market share, we had to sort of put our flag and have a presence in these key source markets, which are the most important. Our largest key source market for India is North America. So that's about almost 20% of our business is from North America, with UK being second with about 13-14%. And if you take the rest of Europe, it's about 20% as well. So, that market for us means that in order for us to protect our brand, in order to compete with these large multinational hospitality companies that come into our market with a plethora of brands, a stable of brands that they can bring to the table, make it extremely, I'd say the challenge is more, how do you, the domestic players, make sure that you stay relevant in your own market and you're not overtaken by the international brands. So I would suffice to say a country like China, with say the largest player being Xinjiang. Okay, where do they stand compared to the multinational hotel companies that have sort of been here for the last 20, 30, 2-3 decades? And where are those domestic brands today? So have they been completely I would say outnumbered by the international competition, or have they remained relevant in their own market? Especially when you have a growing middle classes such as China with almost 700 million people. That's a significant amount. So I think there's two things India and China share is that you both have a huge domestic market. So depending on what the markets are like and the synchronicity of the markets, U.S. will be up, Asia will be down. We're in a cyclical market where we sit on real estate, so it's cyclical. So the fallback is that you have this amazing domestic travel market that's growing, and people have money, and so I think for hotels that's a wonderful opportunity, and the growth is more in the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star range of hotels.
How many brands does the Indian Hotels Corporation have now?
Oh, today we have 4 brands. When we had one brand 10 years ago, which was everything was Taj. So whether it was an ex-Holiday Inn or an ex-Marriott, Courtyard by Marriott, or Hilton Garden Inn, it was all called Taj. So we really had to look at and take a page out of the international companies, basically saying that with the country growing the way that it is, there have been a number of new CBDs growing around the country. So in an ideal scenario, we would have a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star in that market. In other words, for us, what's more important is share of wallet. And we don't really care which brand you stay in, as long as it's one of our brands. And you basically have to have the product, the service, and the price point that meets the expectations of your guest, your consumer. And in a growing market like Asia has, there's an aspirational aspect to that consumer and that potential, lifetime consumer, like a car company. BMW, Mercedes have done it just as well. You start with the 2.0 after you graduate from law school. By the time you're the CEO of the company, you're driving a Mercedes AMR or a BMW 7.0. So it has that kind of aspirational aspect, and it's loyalty to a brand. It's building a brand. It's building that relationship with that client over generations, actually.
And you've since going back and taking the leadership of the Taj, you've taken leadership role outside of Taj within the industry. You've seen that progress with the Incredible India campaign that you were very much involved with, and I think everybody around the world listening to this would know what we're talking about, Incredible India. What legacy does the success of that program and the private sector's involvement, what legacy does that leave in terms of opportunities in the future towards further developing tourism, infrastructure, and everything else related to it, the human resource part and the opportunities you mentioned?
Well, I think it all dovetails and it's all intertwined with each other. So in response to the Incredible India campaign, it's essentially about selling the brand. It's about selling the destination. I mean, if one looks at today those iconic sort of advertising campaigns that made you instantly think of a brand, a product of some kind. The destination campaign, whether it's Malaysia, Truly Asia, or the sunny side of life in the Maldives, or the South African campaign, or many of the campaigns, the Australian campaign, putting the shrimp on the Barbie for those.
I love New York.
Yeah, I love New York. I mean, these are all examples of how that, again, pitching and portraying and projecting that destination outside of that market that you're in is so important.
And did it install a lot of pride within the market, within India?
Oh, I think the Incredible campaign was cutting edge. It was spot on at the time. Today we're on version 5.0 of the original campaign, which is amazing, and it sort of morphs into changing with whatever's demanded of that time in your market.
Raymond Bickson, I could keep on going, but thank you so much for your time. Managing Director and CEO of the TAJ Hotel Resorts and Palaces. Thank you again.
Thank you, Charlie.